The Steam Workshop for Project Zomboid has always been full of great additions, changes and improvements to the game, but with the release of Build 42 in January, there has been a massive wave of new mods to try, and it can get a bit overwhelming at the best of times. So in this video, I'll aim to bring you some of the best ones from this year so far, to make things as easy as they can possibly be. As always, there will be a link in the description for all of the mods covered in this video. All that said, these are the best mods for Build 42 so far. So I want to start off today's video with a very simple but effective mod that I think almost everybody could enjoy. The mod All Shots Fired Increase Aiming XP does, well, exactly what the title says it does, and essentially allows you to replicate the process of range training with firearms. One of the biggest difficulties of the new firearms system in Build 42 is that at low level aiming skill, your shots will naturally be largely ineffective. This can sometimes result in drawing massive crowds of the undead to your location without a reliable way to deal with them, putting you at risk of being swarmed. So wouldn't it make sense that if you weren't trained to use firearms, you'd do a little bit of target practice first? This mod ensures that you don't actually need to hit anything to gain experience, so as long as you have enough ammo, you can grind out those early levels of the aiming skill from the comfort and relative safety of your base. Now, if you do still manage to find yourself in a difficult situation with firearms and hear that dreaded dry click that usually signifies you are in fact out of ways to kill the zombies within biting distance, you may appreciate what this additional mod can offer you. This is the mod Buttstroke, and no, that's not me being forward with you, that's the name of the mod that will allow you to perform a melee attack with the various guns you'll find in Nox Country. Essentially, this mod removes the push animations and replaces them with their own animation with some actual damage to the attack itself. Now, it's unlikely to give you the same results of actual melee weapons, of course, but it does give you a nice last-ditch option if a zombie gets too close to you. What's really nice about this mod too is that if you think the damage values aren't quite right, the modder has added an option in the sandbox settings that allows you to customize that damage to your liking. Now, one of the biggest long-term goals of Project Zomboid is to survive the winter, and in order to do that, you'll almost certainly need functioning electricity. Even if you were to find an alternative way to keep warm, say through an antique stove, you'd still need power to keep your food refrigerated, and we all know how hard finding that damn generator magazine can be. But what if there was another way? The mod Long-Term Food Preservation brings not one, but a host of alternative food recipes and solutions for long-term storage. I've covered a few different mods like this one during the course of Build 41, but this is without a doubt the most comprehensive one I've seen so far. You can cure any meats using salt, which last for a couple of months on their own. You can now jar meats like you would with vegetables in the vanilla game, with their shelf life now extended to 6 months. There's even the ability to create pemmican within this mod. It's safe to say that this will be the mod for wilderness survival playthroughs when we get map mods back for Build 42, and until then, it gives you some excellent alternatives to traditional methods. Next up, I've got a mod for you that you've likely already heard of, with loads of content creators covering it in the last few weeks. This is the Week 1 mod, and what this mod has managed to achieve is absolutely monumental. Not only does it bring actual functional NPCs to Project Zomboid, it uses them to give you an experience of what life was like before and during the initial outbreak. You can actually talk to the citizens of Kentucky yourself. Everyone has different jobs. You can head down to the store and buy various items, and gradually, as things get further along, you'll notice everything starts to change, at first slowly, then transitioning into full-blown panic. Now, this mod does come with a fair share of janky behavior from the NPCs, as well as some general translation issues with dialogue, but if you can look past that, you're going to have an incredible time from start to finish. Now, is this a realistic representation of the outbreak? No, probably not, but I also haven't ever laughed this much playing Project Zomboid either. Oh, and if you're interested in seeing some gameplay of this mod in action, we've already got a couple of videos on the channel showcasing its best moments. It's very tricky to encompass this one in a few minutes, so if you're interested, I definitely recommend watching a video on it first. For now though, we're on to the next one. And next in today's video is Gun's Elevator mod, which is something I thought I'd never see in Project Zomboid, but here we are. As you'd probably expect from the name, this mod makes all of the elevators, at least the ones that face towards the camera, fully functional. Not only does this mean that you can travel both above and below ground, it also means that any items or zombies, for that matter, that are in the elevator with you are also transported accordingly to the appropriate floor. Just keep in mind that there's no guarantee you'll be transported to a safe area. Alright, so I've got something for the lovers of all things tactical next. Now, Project Zomboid has always had a fairly decent collection of military gear available, but when it comes to government and law enforcement, there's definitely some room for improvement. The mod Vanilla Gear Expanded brings in a whole host of clothing and accessory items, from balaclavas and baseball caps to jackets and tactical helmets. You can find most of these items in police stations across Kentucky, but also you'll stand a chance of finding them on zombies too. Now personally, I really like this one just because it brings some much needed variety to the table. Project Zomboid is all about customization and making an experience what you want it to be, so why don't we extend that to our characters too. Now on a similar line of thought to the previous mod, this next one adds over 150 unique items to the game, much of those being related to the customization of your clothes. You'll find new backpacks, new camouflage patterns for military or hunting gear. You can even use camouflage fabric to make your own camo clothing, which is a very nice addition. This mod, aptly named Support Core, doesn't stop at clothing though, choosing next to focus on areas of the game that could use some extra items to fill the gaps. For example, there are a host of camping themed items that really do add something to that kind of experience. No longer am I simply living by a campfire with a tent. I can now also hook up a portable generator, a camping stove, and even a camp shower. This mod also adds a handful of bulk goods recipes, such as packs of fertilizer or packs of seeds grouped by seasons that they are meant to be grown in. One thing I've always felt Project Zomboid could do in a bit more detail was ready-to-eat meals as well, and this mod adds plenty of those, from civilian MREs to military ones and camping meals. I think it's basically impossible for me to cover everything this mod adds to the game, but you can trust me when I say that it's well worth a go for yourself, and there's plenty of surprises to come across with this one. Oh, and if you're into taking a puff or two of the devil's lettuce once in a while, well, this mod has that too. Our last mod in today's video added some food items amongst other things, but how about a cocktail or two? The mod Mixology expands upon the current liquid transfer system brought to the game with Build 42 by allowing users to mix and match both existing and a whole bunch of new liquids to create exotic, flavorful drinks, or just throwing a bunch of stuff into a glass and creating something you might see as a result of a drinking game on a college campus. And yes, you are detecting undertones of past trauma. So the mod brings in a total of 90 new fluids and 85 new items, including collectible Coca-Cola glasses, some new fully readable flyers that advertise consumable products, and last but by certainly no means least, the famous Das Boot. All of these new products can be sipped, chugged, or downed with a handful of new animations, and there are even more features on the way for this one. Build 42 really seems to have brought out the creative side of many modders, and this one is certainly no exception to that rule. Speaking of being creative, this next one is from a modder that has worked on several different mods for Project Zomboid, many of which are well known to the community. This is Spongie's character customization, and if you're one of those people that can spend hours in character creation menus for RPGs or MMOs, then you are going to want to get this mod, because you're about to have that same experience with Project Zomboid. I was genuinely surprised by the amount of detail in this one. You can change your character's physique, you can choose a different face and add various details like scars or freckles. There's even some more, shall we say, interesting customization options available to you. To top all of that off, there's some additional sandbox options for this mod that can tweak things around your character's appearance, like the rate at which stubble will grow, or what effect a missing eye will have for your character's vision. This is just a genuinely cool mod that adds something entirely new to Project Zomboid that I think many players will love from their time with other games. Okay, so I've got a really fun one for you next, one that is by no means a huge implementation, but it does fit incredibly well. This mod is called More Damaged Objects, but that doesn't really tell us a lot about it. Now, ordinarily, if you were to come across a barricade like this one, you'd just be able to go right through it. Or if you hit a lamppost with your vehicle, the car would be damaged, but the pole itself would remain totally untouched. With this mod in play, several of these objects now react as you'd expect them to. Barriers are now smashed through when you collide with them, and other objects will take damage too. Cardboard boxes will flatten, bird baths will be broken, and unfortunately for David the Gnome, even he can meet an unfortunate end thanks to this mod. This one comes down to immersion, making your experience more believable and adding an extra, very destructible layer to the world around you. Okay, how about we step away from driving for a moment with this next one and instead take to the skies with this brand new helicopter mod. It's called UH-1B Helicopter, and as you'd expect, it brings a very limited number of helicopters to a couple of locations in Nox Country. I won't spoil those spawn locations if you'd prefer to find them naturally, but you can always check on the workshop page if you'd like to give yourself a sure goal to aim for. Once you get the hang of these things, the helicopter is actually relatively easy to control and will allow you to traverse Kentucky in a quick fashion. Now, thanks to Build 42 adding more elevation levels, it can be especially useful for accessing higher floors on large buildings, but of course, your presence is going to draw huge groups of zombies to your location, so make sure you're ready for that if you decide to give this mod a try for yourself. Now, if you've been playing since Build 42 came to the Unstable branch, you've probably already spent at least a little bit of time making a post-apocalypse bunker out of a basement, or if you haven't, it might be something you're wanting to try for yourself. The only trouble is that sometimes there isn't much room for expansion or building. Heck, with all the new crafting stations, things can get cramped pretty quickly. So, allow me to introduce the mod Excavation Basement Expansion, which allows you to dig through the walls surrounding your basement of choice. It takes a fair bit of work to do. You'll need various tools and bags to carry away all the dirt you'll be digging through, but then again, something like this would take a lot of work, and thus we could consider this mod grounded in some measure of realism. There are a couple of known issues right now, namely that freshly dug out zones aren't currently considered as indoors, therefore you will get rained on even though you're underground. In the future, the modder plans to add requirements for beams or pillars in order to support the space you're digging accordingly, and even the potential for mining ores to be located underground. I think this is just a really cool example of modders thinking outside the box, quite literally in fact, and proving that all sorts of things are possible with modding. Now, the crafting menu of Build 42 has been a heavily debated topic, but even if you prefer the new way of doing things, you may find that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, and if you flat out just prefer the right-click method rather than going through a separate interface, then you'll probably be interested in the mod What Can I Craft? Now, rather than making you type out what you're looking for in the new crafting menu, this mod allows you to right-click an item that you have, and it will automatically open the crafting menu with a filter already applied for this particular item. This means no typing, no changing filters, and no having to open the crafting menu yourself. It all boils down to one click that will immediately show you all of the crafts applicable to the item you choose. It is simple, easy, and a godsend for those that aren't quite vibing with the new system yet. Now, we're taking a look at the zombies of Project Zomboid themselves next, with a mod that I think brings an extra layer that has never really been considered as much as it maybe should have. This is the Starving Zombies mod, which essentially serves to give the undead a sense of smell. I mean, they see things, they hear things, wouldn't it make sense that smell also factors into their stimuli? Driven by their insatiable hunger and desire to spread the virus, the zombies will now react to the presence of bodies nearby, being drawn to the stench that they emit over time. They will then begin to feast upon the remains, giving you an additional reason to clean up bodies around your safe house. That's not all this mod does though. You'll also be encouraged to keep your character clean. In the vanilla game, washing your character has no real purpose except to change the way they look. But now, if you allow blood to build on your character for too long, you'll discover that your scent will waft on the wind and find the decrepit nostrils of the undead. And that's not me exaggerating about the wind either. The mod actually uses wind speed and direction to establish whether zombies will smell you or whether you'll be undetected, which is an incredible amount of detail for a mod like this. Not to mention, warmer temperatures will also increase the stench that escapes bodies, so keeping things tidy in the summer months will be even more important if you want to avoid hordes coming and knocking at your door. Animal husbandry has quickly become one of the community's favorite things about Build 42, with players everywhere taking it upon themselves to raise and care for various species of animals, whether it be for their produce or simply to keep them as companions. There's one particular instance, however, that I've come across in my own games, and I'm sure many of you out there have too, where you might find a baby animal that is unable to find its mother. Now, this can be heartbreaking at the best of times, and I'd take a guess that many of the players that find themselves in this situation did similar to what I might have, and decided to take that animal in and raise it as my own. However, animals at this stage of development can't eat any food except their mother's milk, and will unfortunately die through the passing of time, since there's no current way to provide them with that vital milk that contains all the nutrients they need to grow. That is, of course, unless you're using the new mod Baby Animal Food, which resolves this problem by allowing the player to craft replacement foods for different species of animal offspring. No longer will you be forced to watch your adopted fur babies wither away, and for that, this modder deserves the highest commendation available. Now, next in today's video is a mod that's very recently come around, and I think it could be my favorite mod of Build 42 so far. This is TV and Radio Reinvented. Now, this mod takes every single television and radio, then replaces their current UI with custom-made interactable panels that are different depending on which device you are currently using. What I really love about that aspect of this mod in particular is that you can change the frequency by turning a dial, or increase the volume by scrolling a little knob on the surface of the radio. It's tactile, and it makes sense for the time period. Radios in vehicles have been replaced too, and if that weren't enough for you, well, they've actually made their own watchable television scenes for adverts, shows, and news broadcasts. Now, to make those watchable videos function, you do have to copy a file from the mod and transfer it somewhere else, but I think that's worth it just to be able to finally see a physical representation of what happens in Woodcraft. If there's any of you out there that happen to be using a controller, you'll be happy to know that this mod is fully supported on those too. Okay, I've got a bit of a light-hearted fun one for all of the item collectors out there as our last mod for today's video. I always like to feature one of these in every mods video I do, because I know sometimes there doesn't necessarily need to be a reason to gather items other than the sheer challenge of collecting them all. In this case, perhaps I should say catch them all, because this is the Pokemon Cards Ultimate mod, and as long as Big Bad Nintendo doesn't catch wind, you'll be able to collect as many Pokemon trading cards as you like within Project Zomboid. Not only that, you can actually sort them into binders and display them in pages like you would in reality. Now, I was never a massive Pokemon kid myself, but I know that there will be a fair few of you out there, and to be honest, sometimes it's nice just to collect something because you can. The sheer number of items in this mod really knocked the wind out of me when I was recording this footage, because with over 1,700 items coming up in the item list viewer, I think it's fair to say that if you download this mod, you're gonna have your work cut out for you if you try to catch them all. So that's it from me in this video, folks, but as a quick reminder, there is of course a link to all of these mods down in the description if you want to download them for yourself. And if you've watched all the way up to this point, let me know what kind of mods you want me to cover in my next videos that I might have missed in this one. I'll be doing these videos regularly as we see more content uploaded to the Steam Workshop, so I'd love to hear which ones you guys are most interested in right now. Lastly, a very special thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers for their support in backing the channel for as little as £3 a month and joining our Project Zomboid multiplayer server on Build 41, where we host unique events, themed monthly wipe cycles, and much more. There's a link in the description for that as well. All that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.